Hey there guys, Conceptual Concept 6.9 here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, and today I wanted to go over a very underappreciated firearm in the tactical preparedness community. That firearm would be the shotgun. We are starting to see proliferation of this coming back to a degree, but overall it's fallen out of favor in the last 15-20 years. Police officers are starting to carry carbines instead of shotguns in their cruisers, and there is some very good merit towards that. Can't fault it at all for that, but I think there's some really good reasons to own one, and I think for a first firearm, it's not a bad option either. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start talking about why you might want one of these. There's quite a few reasons, and at the end, we'll get why you might not want one of these. So let's get into the pros, and then we'll work our way into the cons of the shotgun. One of the biggest pros for me is this is very, very cost effective. I would recommend sticking with Mossberg or Remington for your first shotgun, especially the pump action. If you're really balling on a budget, you can go with the Maverick 88. TFB TV did a torture test on it, and it held up really good. The Mossbergs are kind of weird because they're just very small differences between the Maverick line and the 500 and the 500 and the 590. The Maverick line, the two big downsides versus the 500 like this guy is that you have a fixed handguard. You can't remove it without some serious finagling, and I believe you have a tacked-in ejector. You can't replace the ejector. You can see in here there's a little screw, maybe you can. 500s, you can replace it with a little flathead screw. So the Maverick 88 holds up really, really well, balling on a budget, or you can find something used like this. This guy came in cheaper than a Maverick 88. It's a Mossberg 500 tactical, and I bought it at a pawn shop for 250 bucks. Really hard to argue with that price, especially for the amount of firepower you get with this gun. Shotguns are pretty well known to be one-shot stops overall, depending on the loading. Don't use birdshot for home defense. There's plenty of videos where people get shot with birdshot and they're just confused what happened, didn't penetrate far enough. Use buckshot. But you get a decent amount of firepower for the price. Tack on a flashlight, you are good to go for home defense. And if you're under 21, this would be a hard thing to beat. I know I was really balling on a budget. I was really, really struggling financially between 18 and 21. And I couldn't afford much. So a shotgun, I had a Maverick 88, and I bought one of the Wassers. But the days of the cheap Wassers are gone. The days of the pump action shotgun being super cheap are here, primarily because they've kind of fallen out of favor. A lot of people are getting rid of their shotguns to invest in carbines, and that's not necessarily wrong, but you can get them on the cheap. Again, 250 bucks for this. So moving on to another huge benefit is warfare is changing and drones are a thing, an absolutely terrifying, butt-puckering thing. And one of the best tools you can have for a reasonable price is a shotgun. So FUDs rejoice, trap and skeet is back. It's probably a valuable skill to learn at this point, and get your shotgun out. Get used to shooting at things flying through the air. Plus, pheasant hunting is probably one of my favorite things to do. So the shotgun definitely lends itself well to that, being an anti-drone thing. Might be worth, if you have a group of guys, one of the guys having one of these, if not as his primary, as a light backup gun for when drones come through. I would definitely recommend doing something like duck shot or goose shot for that, just so you can make sure you down the drone. Not like 7.5, because at a decent distance, 7.5 load will just bounce right off, I'm pretty sure. This is all guesstimation in that part. But this will lend itself really well to that. Really handy gun, lightweight, thin, devastating. Went over that. Clint Smith, to be quoted, said, "Rifles put holes through people, pistols put holes in people. Shotguns with the right load at the right distance will physically remove a chunk of from your opponent and put that on the floor." Yeah, shotguns are devastating. And since they've kind of fallen out of favor, you can get them cheap. So those are some really big reasons to get into one. This makes a great first gun if you are under 21. However, if you're not, invest in a pistol. Pistols, you can carry them on you all the time, which makes them a 24/7 defensive tool, versus a shotgun is really only when you're home, because you're not going to be hucking this around, right? So another big pro to this is if you live in a freedom-hating commie state that wants to lick Stalin's boots, i.e. California, Hawaii, stuff like that. Gavin Newsom, how's your 10-year plan to end homelessness? I know you've poured billions of dollars into it. Is California looking better or worse 17 years into your 10-year plan? I don't think so. Sorry for that jab, guys, but let's look into where this will fit. These are, I believe, legal in every state in the union. They're a little less threatening, less assuming than an AR-15. And so legal trouble if you were to use one of these defensively versus an AR-15. Mind you, this is much more devastating than an AR close range. The jury is less likely to find this scary black rifle feel. Unfortunately, not everyone's gun people, and ARs have been made to be the scary gun. Now, definitely don't buy your defensive gun with the intent of how the jury will view it. Buy the best gun for your purpose, but that is a pro to this. It's a little less intimidating than an AR-15. So yeah, it affords you quite a bit of capability where you might be a little more limited with an AR-15 or something similar in those states if you're allowed to have them, however much they're neutered. So just keep that in mind as well. But those are really the big pros. Now let's get into the cons. The biggest con is that the cheaper shotguns, even the more expensive, with the exception of AR style shotguns, which depending on what you're buying might work great. I haven't had great experience with them personally, but they might work great. But these are working man's guns. These require constant feeding and loading of everything. So you've got this tube here, you've got to load each shell in manually. This guy's empty at the moment, but you've got to load each shell in manually. You've got to rack the pump action. If it's a semi-auto, you don't, but again, you're limited on rounds. Typically, you've got 7 to 8 rounds in the magazine tube. So serious limitation there, something to consider if you're planning to run this. Another big downside is if you're looking for preparedness, while this does offer you an incredible amount of versatility and loads between birdshot, buckshot, slugs, you're really limited in range. You're looking at roughly 150 yards being your maximum distance with one of these guns. So AR-15 is 4 times that. So you get a lot more distance, a lot more standoff as a prepared gun for your primary. Another big downside is, especially with buckshot, shot accountability. I believe this is one of the major reasons police moved away from the shotgun and went to AR-15s. There's also the 1980s FBI shootout where shotguns were versus a Mini 14 and they just got clobbered. So buckshot spreads. They call these scatter guns for a reason. Mind you, it does not spread like Hollywood where you aim in a general direction of the room and it just takes out everyone in the general direction. Typical rule of thumb is 1 inch per yard. However, each barrel is its own animal. They all spread differently. So if you get one of these, make sure to pattern it so you know what your load with your gun does at different ranges. And definitely for home defense, mark the furthest distance in your house and check your spread at that distance, because my furthest distance actually is a hallway that passes my oldest kid's room. And if I were to shoot at that distance, I might have to worry about spread hitting my kid. So just make sure to pattern it, know your shotgun, know how it works, all that good stuff. But yeah, just considerations to have. But Your ammunition is also heavier, so you're gonna carry a lot less rounds than something like an AR-15 or an AK. And lastly, it recoils a bunch. So if you're recoil sensitive, if you're a smaller framed person and you're just not up to snuff of shooting full power buckshot out of a 12 gauge, which most people can handle 2 3/4 buckshot, but some people can't. Maybe consider something lighter like an AR-15 for sure. So those are really the major cons of this weapon system, but I don't think you'd be amiss having one of these in your collection. Whether you're going to choose it for your primary or not, it's definitely worth having. I really think they have their merits. I think you can get into one of these really cheap. Actually, this guy with everything on it, I think I'm at about 650, 700 bucks for a fully kitted out gun with optic, with light, with an enhanced stock. Not bad. So consider a shotgun. Shotguns are cool. They're pretty rad. They're coming back into favor with drone warfare a little bit, but you can still get them on the cheap like I did here. I got rid of my Comrade shotgun because I'm not a huge shotgun guy. I don't shoot them a ton, and 1,000, 1,200 bucks it's not worth me having an inventory, which is why I went with this cheap Mossberg 500. So let me know in the comments down below whether you think that shotguns are completely useless, whether they're worth their weight in gold, or whether they land somewhere in the middle. But past that, don't forget to go outside, enjoy nature's beauty, and eat that booty, all right, guys?